This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Chirco, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner and fun. That is Doc from Doc and Jack, John Charles Macaroon. John, how are you doing?
Vito, what a great start to the Detroit Tigers baseball season. I know we'll talk about the opening loss in the series versus the Cleveland Indians, a series that I think is a watershed series early on this season to kind of see where the Tigers are at. But, you know, when we got a chance, you and I, to cover opening day versus the Royals, it was good to go out there and cover the Tigers, learn even more about taking photos, about where we can go, about access and things like that. So I had a great time last week covering the Detroit Tigers. And you know what always makes it fun to cover a team? When they win. So it was great that the Detroit Tigers swept the Kansas City Royals. And going into the series versus the Indians, the Tigers came in at 7 wins and 3 losses, and I think to the surprise of a lot of people, the starting pitching has been okay, the defense up and down, but in terms of some storylines, they actually presented themselves, Vito, and I think that the first week of the Major League Baseball season now and the second that has taken place has really afforded us an opportunity to have some things to talk about, and I really enjoyed going down to opening day with you. It was an ordeal. It wasn't smooth, 100%, but we had the ability to go down there and, you know, have a good time. And I think what made it fun was the fact that you and I basically represent Detroit Sports Podcast in a fun way, but not in a pressurized kind of way. We actually went and had breakfast. And
we did, lighthearted fashion, right?
Yeah, we played around. We had a good time. And I think that you and I both walked away from the experience having a good time with it, not feeling the pressure of like deadlines or anything like that. We went there to report and to get some good insight and information. I think it worked out good.
I think it really did too. And to see the Tigers win as well on opening day, that was great. And what an atmosphere, huh? I mean, a lively, warm, positive environment around the ballpark. A lot of people that probably did not make it into the ballpark to even have the chance to maybe have some sex in the upper deck in the top row. That was hilarious, looking at that article going into opening day at Comerica, because I guess Comerica doesn't stand for that. I don't think any Major League ballpark of the 30 teams stands for that. But it was just hilarious reading that article and hearing the people that chimed in and had stories about their own experiences or witnessing individuals that did do that, did the dirty at, well, Comerica in the past, or in a porta potty nearby. And we didn't see any of that. We had a hell of amount of fun, and it was a good time, you and I bonding as well, and being there around for that atmosphere before the game, during the game, and a lot of media were there as well, you know, surrounded the ballpark, were there to cover that game for the Tigers, and once again to see the Tigers come out victorious as well, and Spencer Turnbull to throw a career-best game as well, double-digit strikeouts. You had Boyd with the double-digit Ks, Spencer Turnbull now with the double-digit Ks. So 2 younger dudes, especially a guy in Turnbull who hadn't had a lot of Major League experience on the mound. Yet he came ready to perform, got it done in big-time fashion against the Royals last Thursday on opening day.
What was your takeaway from opening day? Because I know you had a chance to talk to some of the media. You talked to a lot of people regarding the overall atmosphere. Now, for me, being that it was one of my first times going down there on opening day at the ballpark, I always feel like surrounding the ballpark, there's always that buzz. There's always that excitement. People get down there early. They're already having their drinks. They're in a festive mood. In and around the ballpark, you kind of felt that. But in the ballpark, up until maybe around 12:15, it kind of felt a little bit dead, right? It didn't feel like, it was opening day. And I think part of the reason, which stinks on a day like that, usually in early April, it was too darn cold. And so we got a chance to walk down by the field and hung out by the dirt there and took pictures and took photos and had a chance to talk to Amy Andrews. That was a wild and fun experience.
You love that. Yep.
But I think the cold weather made it so that in the ballpark, it just didn't seem like there was a great deal of atmosphere until the end of the game when Shane Green comes in to close the game out. I just felt like, you know what, maybe the atmosphere wasn't the best, but I will say this. It was great to be at the ballpark. If you're a fan of sports, if you're a fan of professional teams, it was all around great. You had, a bunch of Tigers there. You had a live television broadcast going on. All the major reporters were there, getting interviews and things like that. The part that I found funny was I had said to you, Vito, I think, we should do an interview. And you're like, well, let me see. And kind of we're a little bit passive about it. I'm like, okay. All of a sudden, we're standing there by the warmers, and I see Amy Andrews from Fox 2. And I'm like, you know what? Let me just go ask her a couple questions.
Naturally, you had to ask her.
Naturally, I went and asked her a couple questions about her thoughts regarding opening day. And I like the fact that I wasn't scared. I just asked her a couple questions, and it provided us an opportunity to learn a little bit about, how we look on camera, our posture, how we're saying things. And if you don't do it often, you can't learn from it. So I did realize I was nodding a little bit too much, and I was like a little bit kind of slouching, just a little bit, kind of like way too comfortable. But I did realize that it comes across natural. It comes across...
You're good. You're darn good.
Yes, it comes across that I'm not fearful, that I asked the questions I wanted to ask. And hey, in terms of social media, I think it was great that we both learned kind of how to use Instagram TV and got our content out there.
Yeah, and to see who had more hits, who had less hits. Obviously, you had less hits.
Of course.
You and your bald head, 40-year-old man. They wanted the 25-year-old, darn good-looking man in me, who's almost 26. And I got the hits, surprisingly, for doing nothing, for shooting basketballs over at Little Caesars Arena, that district Detroit right around Little Caesars Arena. So that was stunning to me, but now we have conceptualized the fact that I just draw more viewers naturally. I think people being mesmerized with my, size and lack of height, ultimately, and being 4'7", I think that really helped me out in drawing the viewers in those couple of videos that we've done in the last week, too.
I think you and I were both surprised, like, how the hell are 3,000 people looking at Vito? What's going on?
For how many seconds of video? Well, you threatening me to get fired. I mean, you had to put that threat in there as I was shooting the basketball. You were saying if I didn't make the basket, I would have been fired. So you put that threat, into that video and spread it to the masses. Obviously, I'm still here, so I wasn't fired because I missed the shot, but wasn't canned. Proud to say that. And that was a fun bit we did. We just created on the fly, and we did a lot of that as well at opening day. And it was, once again, a great amount of fun to be there with you. Actually, I'll admit it was. Being there with you, it was fun. And you driving me in, you drove me in. It was freezing cold, but always could be colder, right? And we had those heat vents or those big, warm heat ventilators there in the dugout. We were able to take in and warm up through that, and we were spending a lot of time on the dugout bench, too, because of that, trying to keep warm. So that was great. That provided by the Tigers, and was terrific to have that for all of the media members there that were on the field before opening day, and you and I and numerous other individuals, we got to, rub elbows with, talk with a little bit. Ryan Armani from Fox 2, got a photo with him. You talked to Amy Andrews, as you said, as well. So all of that added up, a lot of great experiences with other media members, too.
Yeah, all in all, it was a great experience. I enjoyed opening day. It's always good to get the W on opening day.
A to W, as I said. A nice photo you took of me. You took a photo of yourself. Great photo ops by you and your official camera now. So you're an official cameraman, right, for the first time ever.
I've added a title. I'm the official DSP photographer.
Yeah,
and
you can say that for yourself.
And it didn't happen until the third game. And so Vito and I went down to Sunday's game versus Kansas City, and we covered the Tigers. And I had said, you know what, Vito, I got this camera. It's in my backpack. I've been bringing it to every game. And I see that on the credential when you look at it closely because, there's a little bit of time when you get there early to kind of look at things and review everything. So I'm reviewing the credential, and it says press box photo areas. And I'm like, you know what? What does this mean, photo areas? And we started to kind of peruse a little bit, and we see that, okay, you know what? Photographers are going down right by the dugout, right by the batter's box. And I'm like, you know what, Vito? I think I'm going to go down there and give it a try. So I hung out with you for the first 3 innings, and then the 4th inning, I rushed down there, and you're allowed to get on the field, actually, in the dirt area, not on the grass. That's a no-no. You can go on the dirt area, on the baseball diamond, in between innings. You can just freely walk, from the entrance area right to the dugout. So there I was, and I'm like, Vito, just capture this because this is really cool.
Had to get you on video. You demanded that much from me.
Of
and
course.
I did.
So I walk right into the pit there, and I start taking photos, and literally the distance between you and I in this recording studio was the distance that I was behind Miguel Cabrera, and it was unbelievable. And you know what? Like I said, everything happens for a reason, Vito. And it was really cool in that the Detroit Tigers official website photographer for DetroitTigers.com, the Major League Baseball website, the photographer, the team photographer, was actually in the well with me. And he's like, hey, who are you? Who are you with? And I said, I'm John Macaroon with Detroit Sports Podcast. We strike up a conversation, and I think he was impressed that I asked him questions. I said, what kind of advice would you give a second-year photographer about taking some photos?
You said second year?
Second year.
Made it sound good. Use a little bit of manipulation there to make yourself sound better than you really are.
Not true.
Okay.
I actually shot photos for the Horizon League tournament last year.
Okay. That counts for something. There we go. That's on your resume. Yep.
So, and it got on ESPN. You took photos of that. And
yes.
So I had an opportunity to get some insight from him, and he was really smart, and he was telling me, really pay attention to the surrounding things and pay attention, about positioning of the athletes, and his camera was high-tech, bro. I mean, his lens was like 4 times the size of my lens, and he was just like click, 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 and it was like snapping like 50 photos to my 4. But at the same time, I'm also learning and learning the ropes and learning the ins and outs about, because, obviously the players are looking like, who's this weirdo
Who
in
the
the
hell is
dugout?
this guy, man? What is this creep doing over here? Please don't touch me.
But it was really cool to see Ron Gardenhire getting the troops fired up. He was like, come on, boys. And that was it. He just basically said 5 words in the 2 innings, and he was like, come on, boys. He was showing excitement and just kind of letting the atmosphere play out.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a great experience all the way around. I stayed there for 3 innings, shot some great photos, and I'll ask you, what do you think of the photos I took? And you can see them on our Instagram page. All you got to do is input 3 words in any search bar, Detroit Sports Podcast, and you'll find us across every social media platform. But I think a lot of people, especially my sister, they were kind of impressed with the photos.
Well, your sister liked them. She's your sister. You just
Yeah.
nailed it on the head why she liked them. But no, they were satisfactory. They were sufficient. You're getting better by the day with more experience, more time put into it. And, I mean, you look like a natural at times, too, behind that camera. So I know you know what you're doing now, and you made it look good. You sold it well. And the pictures, I would say, they really stuck out to you. They were loud and proud. Not as loud and proud, really quick, as Simo's suit jacket for opening day. The loud and proud orange suit jacket that he wore for opening day. And FSD on Twitter actually had a nice video of him like showcasing that man and that jacket, which must have cost him hundreds of dollars. He has so many stellar-looking jackets, man. But back to your photos, many stellar-looking photos from Sunday's action, the 3rd game of the series sweep against the KC Royals. And what does that mean now, Doc, in the grand scheme of things? A series sweep to start off the season against the lowly Kansas City Royals, who are not expected to be good. You can't take too much from it, in my opinion. How about you?
Hey, if you play the game and you take the diamond, it's always good to win. And it sets the tone. It sets the whole attitude. And I do think, in the first 10 games going 7-3 is really impressive. I would say this. It's surprising. And I think what the Tigers need is for people just to kind of pay attention to them, to see and to remain interested, because obviously most people don't believe the Tigers are going to be good. Attendance is going to be way down. The buzz is going to be really limited, and most people are going to assume that anybody that's productive is probably most likely going to be traded. But to go out there and perform well, I think is really good. Especially, we'll start with this. How impressive and how impressed are you, Vito, with Shane Green? He set a Major League Baseball record by achieving 7 saves in the first 10 games in a season, which hasn't been done ever in Major League Baseball. Quite impressive for a guy that is new to the role of closer, but seems to, and from what we've seen lately, kind of has been a little bit more reliable and has been more secure in that position.
Jimenez, decent. Green, extremely good. I mean, the guy, peerless ERA of 0, 7 saves in 10 games to start the season. As you said, setting a Major League Baseball record for amount of saves in the first 10 games of a season. So, superb he has been. Now, the thing is, if he keeps it up, naturally, he's going to be a big trade candidate then for the Tigers as they near the July 31 trade deadline, which is all right with me as long as the Tigers are out of the playoff race by then, which most of us at least clearly believe that to be true, that the Tigers by that midpoint, about the halfway point in the season, will be largely out of the playoff race. 10-plus games behind whoever's in first place in the American League Central Division, to say the least. So you want to be able to trade Shane Green as you near that trade deadline. And if he keeps it up, well, you really increase your odds of getting a nice return as well in return for Shane Green.
Yeah, I think that what caught my attention the most is, when the Tigers had a lead, they bring on Shane Green. And like everybody's noticed, most managers don't use their closers that frequently. And so the way the schedule worked out, it worked in the favor of the Detroit Tigers, and they were able to utilize Shane Green 7 times in the first 10 games. They had a lead, and the good thing is he hasn't really been in too much trouble. He's come in, handled his business, and I do like that because what has everybody been kind of conditioned now? What are we all used to when we see the Detroit Tigers? We're all freaked out whenever the bullpen opens and we hear the music. We're like, oh boy, what's going to happen? How many runs? How many pitches is it going to take to get the opposing batters out? But Shane Green's come in, has been really effective, getting strikeouts, not too many walks, and I've been impressed with Shane Green. The other player that I've been impressed with is Kristen Stewart. Getting RBIs, obviously that massive grand slam that he had in the Royal Series allowed the Tigers to get the W there, and it was a great contest. Kristen Stewart has been productive, and that's really good because the more productivity that the Detroit Tigers can get from any players that they're developing, the better off the Tigers are going to be. They have to foster their system. Anybody that's come up has to be productive, and Kristen Stewart has been a guy that's been hitting the baseball a little bit. He's got like zing on the bat. You can tell when he takes a swing, he's got a little bit of life in his at-bats.
Hits for power. And he has been clutch, I guess you could say so far, coming up in big situations with the timely hits and the big RBIs. Already has accumulated 2 home runs, 10 ribbies as of the day of this recording, Doc. So you've got to give him a lot of credit for his fast start to the 2019 campaign. Yet, you also have to realize and bring up the fact, Doc, that he has not hit for average up to this point, below the Mendoza line. When you are below the Mendoza line, meaning below 200 for your batting average, you're still not hitting the baseball consistently. No matter what, no matter if he's hitting it hard when he's getting out, which he did on Tuesday of this week as well against the Indians in the first game of the series against Corey Kluber and company. Carlos Santana robbed him. So that was, an impressive hit ball, but an out that Kristen Stewart ultimately recorded. So he's still getting out more than he's getting on base. And that still hurts the quality of batter that he is. And I think what he brings to the table, Doc, offensively, it will be limited overall-wise because of the fact that he doesn't hit for average. He's not going to be a big-time contact guy, which will bring down his average, obviously, will bring down his OBP. And you still want to see him get on base. Even if he's coming through in big-time situations, driving in 2-3 runs at a time, Doc, you want to see him consistently make contact as well and get on base. And ultimately, I fear with Kristen Stewart that he won't overcome his woes to start this season and become this guy that can get on base on a consistent basis.
Anybody else impress you to start the season for the Tigers?
Matthew Boyd, easily. Nico Goodrum as well. Now, based on fielding independent pitching, Matthew Boyd going into the day of this recording, Doc, a .01 FIP mark. Superb. Unheard of, you could argue. And that is through 2 outings for the Tigers to start this season. Nico Goodrum, OPS of 846, I believe it was, coming into Tuesday as well. So those guys have performed superbly so far. And those are 2 guys that I really believe, Doc, can keep it up. Maybe not at this rate for either of them, for Boyd especially. But Goodrum is a guy who I think can hit for an OPS of 750 to 800. And Boyd is a guy that's not going to strike out nearly the amount of batters that he has through 2 starts. But he's a guy that's going to have an ERA, I believe, in the low 4s at the very least, and maybe in the high 3s, meaning that should also translate to an FIP mark that is a quality FIP of 4, maybe 4 at the most is what I'm thinking. And there's a good shot at this point, Doc, if he keeps some of it up, that he's going to record an FIP below 4. And that would be a great season out of the left-hander.
Well, everybody was excited with the 7-3 start, and now the Cleveland Indians are in town for a 3-game set. You and I will be covering the contest this week in the afternoon, so look for our coverage at Detroit Podcast. You can follow Vito on Twitter at Vito Jerome. And the first contest did not go the Tigers' way. They got waxed, and unfortunately in the matchup of the aces, Jordan Zimmerman versus Corey Kluber, Zimmerman got waxed, gave up a couple home runs, and the old Jordan came back. And it was unfortunate because I think the Tigers had a chance to come out and show people, okay, we're not just going to go out there and beat the crumb bums, and then when good teams come in, we're going to lay down. But they lost 8-2, and Jordan Zimmerman did not have a really quality start versus the Indians. I think gave up 3 home runs.
Well, he pitched against a real team. He did it in his first 2 starts. Not to dog Jordan Zimmerman, but he finally had a real test for himself, and he failed the test. I wouldn't say miserably, but he let up a leadoff home run, by the way, guess to who? Do you know who it was against? It was against Leonis Martin, former Tiger center fielder. Lets it up to him to start off his start on Tuesday afternoon. So a poor way to do so, lets up multiple home runs as well. Did not look sharp all afternoon long. And once again, that was against a good team in the Cleveland Indians, who don't have a potent lineup by any stretch from top to bottom. But still, Carlos Santana, Jose Ramirez, Francisco Lindor. You have guys that can hit in that lineup. Now, their catcher position, not the best, but he even went deep. I mean, multiple home runs allowed. Whenever that's the case, it's not a good outing. And when you're allowing those home runs as well at spacious Comerica Park, it's a bad sign. And we can't overreact, but it's just like how we couldn't overreact to his first 2 outings. He was terrific in those first 2 starts. But the thing is, when you look at his past and track record of recent memory, Doc, you can bring up with Jordan Zimmerman that he's had these semi-good stretches in the past of 2-3 starts, but the thing is he can't ring up anything consistently of large sample size. So past 2 to 3 outings of success, he hasn't been effective since he joined the Tigers back in 2015 now. So what do we really expect out of him moving forward? For me, I don't expect it done. I expect more of this than what we got out of Jay Zim in his first 2 outings.
So at this point in time, Tigers sit at 7 wins, 4 losses. What's your fairest assessment of the squad in 2019?
Average. Well, I told you. How about the Pythagorean record? Did you see that? I sent out the tweet. 5-5 going into Tuesday's game against the Indians. Had scored 27 runs, allowed 26, meaning you're a 500 ball club for the most part. That's what it screams to me. They're an average team who is going to dip below average at some point, and probably sooner than later, too.
Okay, so what would you say for those that say, you know what, there still is a chance because the Central is not that strong, that if the Tigers can at least get to the trade deadline in contention or around 500, that, you know what, you still will pay attention to them? What will allow you to be a little bit more positive with the Tigers and keep you invested as you cover them and watch them game in, game out?
Well, and I wanted to pose this question to you, too, and hopefully we can get some people, as well via Twitter at Detroit Podcast. I would say Tigers have to be above 10 games, at least above 500. And they're not at least 10, I'm not believing in this team. I'm not going to get all crazy and excited about the team. I am about the long-term future as a fan of the Tigers and as a pundit as well now, covering the games with the podcast network here. But for me as a fan, I'm not excited. I need to see the Tigers reach 10 games or more above 500. Then you can start speaking about the Tigers being in contention.
All right, we're going to take a quick timeout, show love to the sponsors of this fine broadcast. What do you got for us in the second half of this podcast?
We have to speak about Chris Davis. How about his long stretch, longest in Major League Baseball without recording a hit? 0 for 49 going into Tuesday. All of these strikeouts are racked up as well. All of that plus Trump ending his deal for Major League Baseball with Cuba and the first edition for this season of Vito's Notebook. All of that and more after this quick commercial break. And Doc, as you know, one of our fine and our newest sponsors at the DSP network is DC Sports. And for all of their latest signings, guys they have coming in, such as Nico Goodrum of the Detroit Tigers on April 20th, you can go to DetroitCitySports.com. And then also the Detroit Sports Commission, which you can follow at DetroitSports.org, and also on Twitter and Instagram at DET Sports. And make sure to check out those social media handles and that website for all of the marquee events they are bringing to our very region, which is the Metro Detroit area. Thanks to them for all of their support over the years. And back here on Tigers Talk, Doc, I am Vito Chirco, and on Saturday, April 20th, is Nico Goodrum going to be at DC Sports at their location at Lakeside Mall, which, by the way, is their only location right now, to specify to everybody out there. So Just so you all know that, which I know you weren't sure that. I did correct you, though, actually, in the edit I made for your commercial spot recently. So it did sound perfect, by the way, too. I know you weren't sure, and you were bringing up the 2 locations they had. The one that they used to have at 12 Oaks Mall as well. Now it's just the one at Lakeside Mall, where I was for the Darren McCarty signing, and where, once again, Nico Goodrum will be on Saturday, April 20th.
And you're going to be on hand. So if
I
you
will
want
be
to
on
meet Vito,
hand to hopefully interview Nico Goodrum, who has had a hell of a start. Best start by any Tigers position player with the bat, at least in terms of on-base plus slugging percentage, which I care about deeply.
you know who's not been successful at the plate? It's unbelievable when the news started circulating regarding Chris Davis. It's unbelievable, Vito. 0 for 49?
Crazy bad. You almost can't try for that. You can't aim for 0 for 49 failure. Like, even the worst players, even you or I might, like, tap the ball and get a hit. Like, I might get to first. I might actually get a hit before Chris Davis and 50 ABs at the major league level, Doc.
Is it 50 now?
Well, it's almost, I'm saying it's almost 50. At 49, like you said, it's probably going to be 50. So if it eclipses 50, I mean, it's already bad enough. Does the guy sit down for like a week? Like, sit him down for a week? Because you know what? The Orioles are bad anyways. Sit the guy down, man.
It's embarrassing on a national level. Everyone's talking about it.
Yeah.
And everyone's recapping all his at-bats.
I know.
It's
sad for him to track in AB by AB for Chris Davis.
And he had that unbelievable season when, he was, going toe-to-toe with Miguel Cabrera.
For the Triple Crown. So not just for home runs, but for average RBIs, tons of home runs. Can't even get a hit, Doc. Not a single hit and a single AB this season yet.
And he's still going to make, I think, $17 million for the next 2 or 3 seasons.
Then deferred money until like 2040 something. Yeah. We're talking big money for this guy that can't hit the baseball now. Like, if he had a gun to his head, I know this is hyperbole and maybe a little bit too far, but if he had a gun to his head, there is no guarantee he would get a hit against you or I think. And that's a big hyperbole. But against a major leaguer, even a borderline, like 4A guy that's really a AAA pitcher, there's no guarantee you would get a hit off of one of those guys right now, Doc.
And in looking at it, north of 20 strikeouts among the 49 at-bats without a hit.
Now, that was expected. If he's going to be 0 for 49, ever go through a stretch like this, of this epic proportion, guess what? He's going to strike out a lot. He already has in his big league career. He's going to easily eclipse. If they let him bat enough this season, Doc, think about how many strikeouts he will rack up. North of 200, easily. How about 250 to 300? He might actually eclipse in strikeouts this season.
Man, so on Twitter, on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, I said, what should Chris Davis do to break his slump? And a lot of people made major league references. Chris Wynn on Twitter says, consult Ricky Wild Thing Vaughn. Gator Punisher on Twitter gets in. He said, get a slump buster. And we all know what that means.
There could be a sexual innuendo to it as well, or a spin on it. And I don't know if he's married, single, or whatever, but maybe it will come down to something like that.
Martin gets in, and he says, I now live in Baltimore, and the fan base is calling for a scalp. Is Miguel Cabrera catching it big time for his slow start? And I think you and I kind of addressed it a little bit on Twitter. People are asking management, they're asking other players regarding the start of Miguel Cabrera. And I said, and I replied, you know what? Because of the fact the Tigers had won 7 of their first 10 games, really no big deal. But it is noteworthy that Miguel's stats to start the year, not that impressive.
Not at all. He's not hitting for average. There's no extra base power in his bat. And it's scary to think this might truly be the end of Miguel Cabrera now as a premium major league slugger. Because remember last year before he got hurt, he played in only 38 games and missed the rest of the season. Well, he was hitting 299, was above 300 until the very end of his premature season in 2018. So you still thought you had a premium or a premium-esque major league slugger. You don't have anything close to that right now in Miggy.
But the talk of Miggy's demise has been there for the last couple seasons, and he always kind of comes around, at the end of April, May, when the weather turns and his bat heats up. Wouldn't you say it's a little bit premature to talk about the demise of Miguel Cabrera until he has a whole season where he doesn't perform at the level where you think he'd be?
Well, 2017 was a bad season already for him, though, if you remember right. So he's had one bad major league season already that really screams to you that, the demise of Miguel Cabrera is rapidly occurring. So at this point, when you see his April numbers, it is April, very early in the season. It's a marathon of a season. 162 games are played in the Major League Baseball season in totality. So you can expect him to bounce back, to hit for a little bit of power, at least at some point, driving some runs. Thing is, for him to do what he did at one point where he was a Triple Crown guy, where he hit for average, that means hit for power, drove in the runs too, you're probably not going to get that from Miguel Cabrera at this point in his career. And because of that, I think you have to be concerned that Miguel Cabrera is nearing that demise at least. And with that being said, I want to get to Vito's notebook on this week's episode of Tigers Talk. And as I had brought up, the best starting pitcher for the Tigers currently through 2 outings is Matthew Boyd. And with that being said, here are the particulars regarding Matthew Boyd's success to start the season. Boyd, through his 2 outings, has recorded an FIP of 0.01, and that is also through 11 1/3 innings pitched. Now, the Tigers' best hitter, as I had brought up already too, based on base plus slugging, has been Nico Goodrum so far, who had an .846 OPS through 10 games and 38 plate appearances. And then, if you want to look at who have been the worst performers for the Tigers thus far. Now, through the Tigers' first 10 games, you could easily say that the Tigers' worst hitter had been Mikey Matuk, who had an OPS below 100. Yeah, I didn't stutter there. Below 100, actually. That is bad. Really bad. And that was through 7 games and 21 plate appearances. By the way, he butchered a ball in center field, too, earlier today, the day of this recording on Tuesday against the Indians. So not only can he not hit right now, which is true, also isn't fielding the baseball very well for himself in center field. And then, based on fielding independent pitching, Detroit's worst starting arm so far has been Tyson Ross, who was quality on Sunday when you and I were both there, courtesy of the DSP network. He has a 4.42 FIP in 2 starts and 12 innings pitched. And the worst pitcher, though, for the Tigers staff overall-wise, has been, so far, the lefty Daniel Norris. An 8.82 FIP in 2 games out of the Tigers' pen. And now Matt Moore is on the injured list as well. So you're losing his veteran presence, started off the season well for himself in a Tigers uni, and now Norris, I presume, is a guy that will take his rotation spot. Now, I'm not sure of that at this point, but Norris is a guy that I would like to see thrown into the Tigers rotation, at least at some juncture in this campaign. And I think as a relatively young lefty still, he still has some value in his left-handed arm as a starting arm specifically. So I want to see the Tigers utilize him, get the most out of his arm as the season progresses by putting him into the rotation. And this might be, truly might be, Doc, the right time to insert him into the rotation with the injury to Matt Moore.
Okay. I think that when people are looking at the injury to Matt Moore, do you think that it's going to cause a ripple effect and cause a demise of the starting rotation? Because obviously people are looking at Daniel Norris and they're not real confident. Matt Moore had done some good things, and I think the 2 pitchers that people are going to question the most are going to be probably Tyson Ross and Matt Moore. And with him going out, there's kind of been up and down talk regarding, is he going to have surgery? Is he not going to have surgery? And I think right now they're leaning toward him kind of rehabbing this injury and coming back maybe in a few weeks. It's just unfortunate for Matt Moore because he kind of got off to a semi-decent start. But I think the biggest question mark and the biggest unknown is maybe it would behoove the Detroit Tigers to look in the minors, maybe at a Kyle Funkhauser or bring somebody else up as opposed to maybe going with Daniel Norris, who I think many people are just really happy with keeping him in the bullpen and maybe just grooming him for that position. I don't think a lot of people among our fan base, at least on our Twitter page, and those that are really watching the Tigers, I don't think they're fans of Daniel Norris. They're really scared of his inconsistencies.
They've given up on him already. He's only 26 years young, too, not 26 years old, as I like to spin it. You're 40 years old, okay? I'm 25 years young, almost 26. Daniel Norris, I believe, is 26 right now. So you can't just give up on him completely, because a lot of people have frowned about him recently, have turned on him as well, with that being said. And speaking of turning on somebody, and specifically a group of people, President Trump, how about what he has done, reversing the course of the past U.S. President Barack Obama and turning on the country of Cuba in the Cuban Baseball Federation by reversing an agreement negotiated by the aforementioned Obama administration. And it abruptly ends a deal between Major League Baseball and the Cuban Baseball Federation that had eased the path for players to compete in the United States without defecting from their country. Doc, your thoughts on that?
Well, when you sent it, I was like, okay, so that means that in terms of immigration and things like that, Trump is serious about the country being full and that he's not really willing to work with countries right now. But I found it interesting in terms of talent. You know what I mean? Usually the notion and the kind of purveying attitudes have been, look, if you're a good player, I recently saw the Red Wings documentary, and they were, back 30 years ago taking duffel bags full of cash to these Russians and are like, look, we want you, come. And they were willing to, subvert, governments and willing to do anything to get these players. Now, you look at it and you see Obama and his work to kind of open the door with Cuba, and it kind of, fostered that talent. And I'm always of the opinion that, hey, if there are talented baseball players and they want an opportunity to work here, why not allow it? Why not allow Cubans to take advantage of opportunities here in the United States, especially if they're going to play baseball? But according to the president, that's not the policy that's going to be going forward. What do you make of it?
Well, the Trump administration, too, by the way, said that the deal that was negotiated by the Obama administration with Major League Baseball constituted a violation of trade laws because the Cuban Federation was a part of the government in Havana. A departure, clearly, from the previous administration's stance on that very matter, Doc. Now, for me, he is really making it tough on them specifically to be able to come over to compete in Major League Baseball without defecting from the country. So that's what Trump is now trying to institute, is the way in which Cubans now, once again, clearly have to defect from their country in order to make it happen in Major League Baseball for themselves. And I'm all about the American dream, giving the land of opportunity model to as many people out there, including people from foreign nations such as Cuba. So with Trump shutting the door on this, I don't agree with this policy. I think it's a slap in the face to Obama, to his administration, which, I was a fan of more than the Trump administration, as you guys know, probably from my stances on Too Bad Hombres, not to get into that big time. But it's just the fact of the matter is that Trump is reversing the course, and I think doing the Cubans dirty. And I think it's a disgrace. I think he's doing them an injustice by not allowing them to have this easy path to compete in the U.S. of A. without clearly defecting from their country.
Okay. Across Major League Baseball, have you kind of peeked at the slow start of the Boston Red Sox and the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim? It's not a good look so far for Brad Ausmus, and people are out there in L.A. are like, huh? What's going on with Brad Ausmus? What's going on? Boston, though, the Red Sox slow start has been kind of surprising to me in terms of all the talent that they got. I think they're like 6-7 games under 500 to start the season.
Well, you know what? Pitching woes. They can hit, they will mash as the season progresses. But the rotation, I don't know if it's that great behind Chris Sale, who has struggled. Remember, Chris Sale signed that massive extension with the Bo Sox. Had a horrible opening day start. Since then, I don't recall exactly what he has done. But not the greatest. Porcello, not the greatest. Price, that's your 1 through 3. I wouldn't rely upon that 1 through 3 to win you a World Series once again. Clear cut, Red Sox are still one of the best teams, not only in the American League East Division, but in the American League in totality. But I don't think they're as good as a year ago, and I think the Astros could be better, and the Yankees will bounce back, I think, from their slow start as well to be the leaders in the American League East Division. Right now, though, it's all about the Tampa Bay Rays and that pitching rotation and staff, which has an ERA below 2 to start the season. So the Rays' success has been predicated largely upon the shoulders of their great pitching staff to start the season. And the Cy Young winner from a year ago that people really don't even know about still today, Blake Snell, another great start to the season, and it looks like he might repeat as Cy Young winner. He'd be an early season favorite to win the American League Cy Young Award. So you have to like what the Rays are doing and not like what the Red Sox are doing, or totally what the Yanks have done to start this season. And the Yanks, to bring up something regarding them really quick, are depleted by injury. Giancarlo Stanton is hurt. Gregorius, all these different dudes have succumbed to injuries already. Troy Tulowitzki, so many injuries to not only that lineup, but also the pitching staff, and now they're having to rely upon DJ LeMahieu, a guy from Birmingham Brother Rice, a lot more, who has hit the hell out of the baseball thus far playing for the Yanks. So, if he keeps it up, they got that great pen, all those flamethrowers at the back end of that pen, the Yanks will be all right, and for sure as the season progresses. But right now, some early season woes out of those teams that were expected to be big-time contenders in the American League East Division this season.
Now, you showed me when we were in the press box the brawl between, I think it was the Reds and the Pirates.
Yes.
Oh, what a brawl.
Pui got in there and fought the entire Pirates team. That was crazy, man.
It was something, huh? These early season brawls, a little bit of angst and stuff like that. Some other notes that people are paying attention to, the Cubs are struggling as well over there in the National League. I think a squad that you had pretty much doing well in your early season prediction, didn't you?
Cubs third place. And I said third place in the NL Central. Get that prediction right, okay? Don't misconstrue and twist my words now, Doc. But what were they, 2-7, 2-8 to start the season? Horrible from the Cubs. But guess what? Lester, he's their ace, and how old is he now? He's not getting any younger. He's not getting better either, with that being said. So the rotation is smelly. Yu Darvish has been smelly as a Cubs rotation piece thus far. Horrible last year, then got hurt. This year, not great as well to start the season. So that rotation is getting old. The team as a whole is getting old. And because of that, I don't think the Cubs are a true contender in the NL Central this season.
And before we get out of here, it was announced earlier on Tuesday that pitcher Clevenger for the Cleveland Indians is going to be out about 6 weeks with a back injury. Do you think that kind of bodes well for the Detroit Tigers in the remaining two contests? Do you see the Tigers getting swept at home in a weekday series versus the Indians where all the games take place starting around 1 o'clock? Do you see the Tigers getting at least a W?
Well, 1-1. I think the final game of the series, it's Bauer, or Bieber, right? Bieber for the Indians taking on Turnbull. So I'm banking on Turnbull to win another start at home, 2 straight Thursdays. Am I banking on him too much there? Might be. But I think the best case scenario for the Tigers to win a game in this series is that Thursday game, the last game of this series against the Tribe, when it is Bieber, not Justin Bieber, but Bieber versus Spencer Turnbull. And then the first 2 games, Kluber already won on Tuesday. Wednesday, it's Bauer going against the Tigers. So you got to like the Indians' first 2 games of this series. They're winning 2 out of 3 to sum it up and could easily sweep the Tigers as well.
Well, Vito, to end the podcast, I want to let everybody know Doc's peachy positive newsworthy note, and that is Spencer Turnbull and Matthew Boyd last week were able to go back-to-back games with double-digit strikeouts. You alluded to it, but it's the first time that happened in several seasons, and the Detroit Tigers were able to, strike out a ton of batters, and they were able to really utilize the starting pitching for success. So, Matthew Boyd and Spencer Turnbull in back-to-back games. Really, Matthew Boyd versus the Yankees and Spencer Turnbull on opening day versus the Kansas City Royals were able to strike out double-digit batters and quite impressive. So the starting pitching so far has been quite impressive for the Detroit Tigers, keeping them in a lot of games and a lot of early strikeouts. So props to Matthew Boyd and Spencer Turnbull for that unique accomplishment.
Absolutely. And really quick regarding Spencer Turnbull, it took him 4 games and 3 starts last year to accumulate 15 Ks. Only through 2 starts this season, he has accumulated the same amount. 15 strikeouts, that is, in 11 innings of work, only 4 base on balls as well allowed by Turnbull, who has recorded an FIP of 2.82 as well. So, speaks highly of him and what he has done in a Tigers uni to start this season, Doc. And with all of that being said, I believe that wraps up this edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. That is a Doc from Doc and Jock, and I am Vito Chirco signing off. Have a great day, a great week, and talk to you guys again next week.